Look at this.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, I am good and I am in transit today.
It looks like it. Where are you going?
Uh, I'm in Boston, in the Boston area, and I'm going over to Boston College to meet up with a professor there.
Very neat. Are you in
It's actually
school?
someone you. No, at this stage, it's
Approaching Brookline Village.
I would put it in the category of professional relationship, and the person I'm going to see you may have come across. Her name's Sandra Waddick. She's written a reasonable amount, I would say, in terms of work that is done in business schools. It is
The destination of
the
this
most
train is
informed,
Riverside.
one of the most informed by
Stand clear of the closing
the
doors.
living world. And so, yeah, I met up with her. It might be almost 9 months ago now, when I was still in the PhD program, and we talked about that, and she gave me some advice. And now that I've withdrawn from that, yeah, I think the relationship is a little different, and I'm intrigued to hold it from a collaborative perspective and see what we might do together if there is interest from her. But either way, checking in and reconnecting with her.
Well, share her information in the chat if you can, or via email.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Morning, Ani.
Morning.
Morning, Robert.
I'm eating as well. I got a little bit late. Sorry.
Yeah, this is sort of
I usually try to finish.
this is a snack before breakfast. Yeah.
Whoops. There goes the world. It's just going topsy-turvy. Hey, Mark. Well, here comes Ani.
It's so interesting to me how serendipity is such a big part of life. I started out this morning getting really caught in Substack. It just keeps doing things I don't understand. And I take them at face value, and then it's whoops, we're into something that I am not sure I want to be in. So I was exploring that whole mess, and one of the threads led me to a video that was called What If Star Wars was not called Star Wars, but Star, and how we peacefully evolve the planet, or something similar. It's not exactly that, but you get the gist. And so there was this whole going back and forth between the warrior piece and how we would do it as peaceniks, and cutting up the narrative to say, well, instead of that, we would have done this and this and that and the other thing. And it came off very weak. That the whole piece approach to things just doesn't have traction. It doesn't grab you. It's not interesting. None of that. So then the next thing was Humanity Rising. The lady there was is an incredible person. Her name is Spring Cheng. She is a Chinese person who immigrated to the United States, and in that process of immigration, she spent some time in Tibet, and she was talking about her journey in life as a dichotomy between the tendency in Chinese culture to defer your individualism to the group, and the drive that you have as an individual to be who you are. And she really framed that journey as the and I'm not going to remember the whole phrase is not coming to me, but it's fight, flight, fawn, and freeze, I believe. Those four things, those four approaches that we have to trauma. And really characterized her life in that. And what an interesting frame. What an interesting frame to look at your life in terms of and her whole focus is culture and integrating the uniqueness of the person to the culture. And so much of what we're doing in terms of trying to change this world is all about that. It's all about getting out of the culture we're in and trying to recreate something that's new and more authentic to us, basically a new culture, because there's so many of us doing it. Um, so it's just a really interesting way of thinking about who we are and what we're doing. And so I came this morning with that question in mind. How have we as individuals managed that balance between being who we are and being a creature of our culture?
It fits together to me.
Say more, Ani.
I'm both. I'm much more than I think I am. And sometimes much less, but I don't know. I feel like I've just walked back from death. Um, life is so much different than we think it is. I think it's beyond my limited capacity as a single brain, as a single entity, to really comprehend all that is and all that I am. And it's worth exploring the adventure. It's worth an open embrace of it all, because life continues. Life is regenerative. Life is eternal in some form. And it's fascinating, and I'm humbled by it. And I'm interested in comprehending more and being more integral and open for interacting with life, people, circumstances. I do feel like I just walked back from death. I've had diverticulitis.
Ooh.
And, yeah, and I was at the hospital yesterday and taking a taxi to the hospital and just finding my way. And I have. I found my way. And I welcome that kind of experience beyond my comfort zone, beyond my normal thinking. That's my check-in.
Well,
Well, it seems like we got the same memo sometime last night. quite a, well, I was trying to grasp just what it means to, this hierarchical structure of matter, from quarks as small as I dared to go, but all the way up through molecules and all the way up through the creation of DNA and all the way up from there to interactions between life form. Well, you could almost say that the DNA molecules have a form of life, but I guess it's not technically accepted. But well, so I was capturing an image of that in my mind, of this hierarchy. And it's kind of like enjoying this trip that Mark's taking. It's part of the scenery passing by as I share this. But then I started to realize that there is absolutely the same kind of structure that surrounds my every living moment, my days. Things I've done, people I know, or people or animals or things that I have around me have done, their experiences. And there's this, almost like a double helix of energy, of these different events all spinning together. And I intersect that in different place at every moment of my day.
Mm.
And what the final point I came to was that all of this actually is an expression of consciousness, or maybe not consciousness isn't the right word, but of having some form of intelligence. And it's all living. That's what I finally ended up with. And then I was so excited by it, I had trouble getting back to sleep for hours. But I just kept sort of letting the ripples of that just keep going. That's why I almost forgot. I was just about to sit down with my sandwich, and Terry said, "Don't you have a Zoom meeting to go to?" Anyway. So it's very much in the air what you're, saying. Maybe I just approached it differently, but I'm beginning to realize that it's not predetermined at all. It's just that the threads are always there, and it keeps happening. It's just like we used to think that DNA was determinative and it was set,
Right.
and it's not. Epigenetics are just as as vital and shifty as the genetic code process. That's what I understand to be the latest findings that are pointing toward that. And in fact, they may even be more effectual upon the actual growth of our mind and body, so social aspects and so forth. So this ties in. The most extreme experience I've ever had with what you described was actually in Taiwan. I was there at a peace conference, and I was doing a course for a group of people who were all part of this religious cult, basically. And I was sort of gently told, at the end of my presentation and a workshop, really getting that that wasn't the Chinese culture, that this went totally against, the way of the culture of the social pressure, the social guidance. And then about an hour later that evening, I don't know what, this small young woman, I mean, she may have been a teenager, but I think she was in her low 20s. She came up and started asking questions, and we sat down, and she just asked question after question after question. I said, okay, that's a very interesting turning of the page. She obviously doesn't buy, the explanation that I'd heard. She was all ears. And in so many ways, I mean, I can relate to that in my own youth of sitting at the feet of somebody else who was maybe from outside of the culture, either, a sort of a hippie sort of person who totally loosened their mind thinking, to foreigners. And, we all kind of went through that. So I think it's very important that we have to leave cultural boundaries behind. There's no alternative.
Amen.
So
I mean,
I'm cautious about the word leave behind, or the words leave behind. I'm thinking of where I went with this is my understanding of nature, the individuality of every self and the cohesion of the landscape we call nature, and how those two tensions are intertwined in that existence totally. And there's something about that interdependence that we as humans are missing, or have not grokked maybe, because there's such a tendency to leave behind, to want to let go or dismiss or not engage in that, make the other wrong in some kind of way. And that's the tension that I see between individualism and the community, all of that. I mean, it's the same tension everywhere. How to be who I am and still be part of whatever. And there's like this constant search to find groups to be part of that give you the sense of completeness where you have both halves together. And you can create a bubble for that, but then there's this bigger group that's going to pull you all apart all over again. And so I think there's just a great deal of wisdom in looking at that, and being more conscious of that. How do we integrate both of those pieces? I mean, we have to do it individually. And Spring really talked about that, and how she did that when China invaded Tibet. And she was caught as a Chinese person seeing people she loved being decimated. And so she felt responsible, even though there was actually she couldn't trace any of the people she knew in her family doing this, but because it was the Chinese people doing this, then she felt that sense of responsibility. And how to walk that line, how to, and she, what she said about that was that she chose unity. And so she developed an 8-month project in Seattle where she brought together people from the Chinese immigrant community and people from the Tibetan immigrant community to listen to each other's stories as a way of creating that understanding of interdependence that was not there before. Seeing people as people and knowing their stories doesn't makes them friends, not enemies. You begin to be able to embrace them even though they're different. And I wonder if it's our tendency to do either or that really generates this whole tension that really isn't there, but it's a manufactured tension because we separate in this way, and and believe it's an either or choice. And that tension of having to do that is what creates all this fuss.
Nicely
Yeah.
put. There is no either or.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really a both and.
It's just small-minded, egoic thinking or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of segues actually into my insight this morning for I was explaining to somebody in my dream about a book uh, which I sent to my ex-husband when we separated, um, called Love is Letting Go of Fear.
Nice, nice, nice.
I remember
But
that.
what I realized is that fear is letting go of love.
Mhm.
And
Nice.
I don't think we get that other side so much. And that's where we have the choice to pick up the threads that are always there and the context in which we pick them up. And then we weave whatever we weave based on where we were when we picked that thread up, in fear or in love. Yeah. I mean, nature is love, right? That's why we go out there. We feel better about ourselves. We feel better about the world. Everything's right because everything is right there. They're just fine. They're loving their life. They're, the chaos and the pain and all of that is fine. It's part of life.
Yeah.
And they're loving it all, just like you said it, honey. It's just all wonderful and marvelous. Then we come back into this life and have to geared ourselves up with all sorts of armor to protect ourselves in all the confronts that we have in our everyday life.
I'm reminded of Elizabeth Sahtouris right now in saying that we are a young species still evolving
Mhm,
to a
mhm,
more holistic perspective,
mhm.
to a more holistic identity. I really like what you're saying. Love is letting go of fear. Fear is letting go of love. That's beautiful. And nature is love.
Mhm.
And we're genetic, we're epigenetic, we're cosmic. we're cosmic in origin. We're
So,
galactic in origin.
so how could we have that conversation with people who don't have this point of view that we do? How can we what stories can we tell and what talking points can we create to help bridge that dichotomy of people who have no sense of any of this?
Some of it is just stating fact. We're cosmic in origin.
How is
We're,
that a fact? How is that a fact?
well, science, some branch of science, of the cosmic branch of science, whatever that's called, the astronomy, astrology, I don't know, people who learn stuff and talk about it, share it, teach ourselves by being with each other and sharing what we've explored, what insights we have. I don't know how else, other than doing a program and having an educational thing.
Yeah,
Which,
the video that I talked about, the Star Wars video, was in the context of sharing your story with the press, basically, which is kind of where that question for me came from, how to talk to others, how it's a marketing question as well. It's a way that you And this is something that I've really been struggling with, and I have not by any means resolved, is how to figure out how to talk to people, to awaken a seed of inquiry, I guess, so that they're willing and open to explore this when it is so outside of what they're doing. And my approach, I think, really has gone to soil, because it's something that people really understand. And it's been amazing to me, actually, when I talk about the Soil Smart program, people like get it. They get excited about it. It's like, oh yeah, this is it. And we're not talking climate change. We're not talking anything else but making the soil alive. And it's a way that seems to connect. And my hope is that if this is alive, then what other things in your life do you want alive? What's not alive in your life you can get rid of? You can begin to see that, using that as the model.
Soil Smart.
Yeah, I got it. It's a new website, soilsmartsoilwise.com. He's back.
What's is this something that you're creating?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, it's a program I tried to engage the city in, and they were all excited and said, well, maybe next year. So I was left with, okay, now what? So
Let
I'm now whatting.
give some tips, because when you say when you express about Soil Smart, Soil Wise, my mind immediately goes in a political framework of city kind of things, and that's not the framework to use or to go to. Just say more about the 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 natural origin of it
Well,
all.
for Spokane, we live on an aquifer.
And that means there's water running through the city, because I don't know what an aquifer is still.
An aquifer is a reservoir of water under the ground.
Oh,
And there's lots of different kinds of aquifers, about 4, I think. But what it means is that water has collected there over millennia, and it was there, and then we discovered it by drilling down and discovered we could take water from there. So we have, and we do. And we have taken so much water from aquifers worldwide that we've actually shifted the tilt of the earth, because we've taken the weight from aquifers and put them in the ocean. So that had,
your last sentence, would you repeat it?
so we've taken so much water from the aquifers that the weight of that water has been distributed from being in the aquifer to being in the ocean.
From being in dirt to being in an ocean.
Yeah, so it's actually shifted the way the earth balances itself.
And what does that operationally mean?
It means that the water that has been collected for millennia is being depleted. And since we've become dependent on it, we are at risk of not having water or access to water. And it's something that affects a lot of cities. Where I am, the aquifer covers several states. Actually, it's probably the biggest aquifer in the United States. So it has a lot of water. But as the water goes down, there's a space between the earth and the water, and that collapses in places.
Ah,
And the water gets harder to get up. And the plants that have been able to reach it earlier no longer can, because the water's down now. So it has lots of consequences, actually.
what is your heart's desire how would you, what is your heart's desire to publicly share this? That's not the exact question I'm trying to get to, but I
Well,
want to learn more about what you're saying.
so
be-
what I'm trying to do is to get people to understand that we have the capacity to address this issue, at least to some extent. We can't put water back into the aquifer. It doesn't work like that. The water has to go down through the soil to get into the aquifer, with a few exceptions, but that's basically how it gets in there in the first place. But it only goes through soil that's alive, because dead soil does not absorb water. It sheds it. It rolls off of that. So in order to get water to go down into the aquifer the way it's always been designed to do, we need to pay attention to the health of the soil. And if we pay attention to the health of the soil and enliven that soil through composting, which everybody can do, or the use of biochar, which takes a little more effort, or the use of bacteria and fungi inoculations, which takes a little more expertise, but there's all these levels. Then as that soil becomes more fertile, more vital, it holds more water. And a 1% improvement in the richness of soil allows that soil to hold up to 25,000 gallons of water per acre. That's huge. That's
Where-
huge.
Learn all this.
Oh, it's all there. You just have to look. And I've got a 6-minute little slideshow now that talks about all this. And this is all part of the water cycle. Trees make rain. It's not the ocean, it's trees, really. The ocean helps, yes, it does its thing, but it doesn't get all the way inland. So if you're going to talk about inland and water inland, it's trees and plants and green stuff. That's the only way that water happens. So they have to get water, and they get water through their roots, which we hope comes down in rain. Again, they have to have a soil loose enough and rich enough to hold water for them to have. And then they evaporate it into the sky, and then it moves over a few miles and drops as rain again. That's how the Amazon makes its own weather. Well, as that's destroyed, then that doesn't happen. But what happens when it gets trans-evaporated, it creates air rivers. They're called atmospheric rivers that flow throughout the globe. So the fact that there is no more forest in Sahel, Africa, means that Europe is going to have drought, because the rain it would have gotten from that trans-evaporation isn't happening. And wherever we remove trees, we discover we get drought, but people haven't made that connection before. You know, we just do stuff and move around, do stuff and move around. And so people don't see that connection between getting rid of plants and the drought that happens. I had a huge insight on this. I watched a documentary on the Mayan. And they now have a technique where they can see through trees to see what the ground looks like under trees.
Oh,
So
what
when
do
they did
you- Oh, through a forest?
through the forest, yeah, it's a radio microwave kind of thing. And so when they took away the trees, they see all these bumps in the ground, which turned into be Mayan ruins. So they can see what the Mayan ruins look like without having to evacuate all the trees. And when they plotted that out, what they saw were these wonderful pyramids that the Mayans made, and lots of terraces where they grew their crops, but no trees. It's like our cities, no trees. When they looked at the stalactites in the caves in those areas, they can see the temperature back centuries. The Mayans left like 750 to 800 BC, something like that, is when they started to evacuate their cities. When they looked at the stalactites, that's when it got really hot. And that's a sign of drought. So they had evacuated enough trees by then because the cities had spread. It was huge. I mean, it was a huge, just like ours, very similar. And they had roads and all that kind of stuff. And they got rid of the trees to do all that, just like we do. And so it came back to bite them at that point of time. There's a tipping point where it's there. But we didn't see that cycle. We didn't get it until now. So now we can impact that cycle. We can do something about that by working on our soil and replanting original forests. So the Miyawaki piece is a part of that, as is landscape design, because you can design your land to hold water so that it has time to percolate down instead of getting rid of it. And most cities, all cities, are designed to get rid of water because it's a problem. So that has to be reversed, so that instead of getting rid of it, we're channeling it where we want to keep it, so it has time to go down and refill the aquifer. So I mean, this is not rocket science. It's pretty simple. And there are things that we can do as people, as individuals. You don't need anybody else's permission to do this. You can talk to your neighbors, and absolutely, the more people we get, the better off it is. But there are things that I can do, that you can do, just here. And I think that's amazing. You know, instead of feeling like we're victims, we can actively work to change that. Yeah.
I'm looking for a sentence from you that states what you just did, that sums it up.
So what I'm saying here is we want to keep the water we get. If you want a sentence, that's what I would have to, instead of getting rid of the water we get. So we use, and I've been told I need to do more research on this, but so I will. But what I have now is that Spokane as a city uses 53 million gallons of water a year. It's a lot of water. However, by rain, we get 17 billion gallons of water a year.
And what's the first one you said?
53 million
53 million.
versus 17 billion.
The context of each.
Yes, so we get way more than we need. So if we would keep that water, we would not have to draw so much. If the soil is moist, you don't need to water your lawn. If the soil is moist, you can go through droughts easier. If the soil is moist, you're resistant to fire. It's a win-win-win-win. But you have to have living soil to do any of this. So where we started was this cultural conversation. So I'm using nature as a way to refocus people into being focused on life and the life around them and their capacity to facilitate that, as opposed to worrying about all this other stuff. If they do that, a lot of this other stuff will be taken care of. I mean, I feel the same way when people get caught up in racism. And yes, there's a whole conversation there. And yes, it's absolutely true that poor people get shafted. I don't care what color they are. That's absolutely true. And if we work on a thriving soil, everybody wins. Everybody can do it. Even poor people can do this. You know, composting, anybody can do. We all eat, we all have garbage, we can compost. So it's not, it levels the playing field in a way for me, because if you're talking about life, then my hope and belief is that people will notice when that's not possible for people for whatever reason. And then you just deal with the fact that it's hard for them, because it's all about life. It's not about white, black, or blue, or anybody else. It's just we all need to live. And so what do we do with that? And how do our actions make sure that life is possible for everything? Period. I mean, I just think that cuts through all sorts of crap, because our head will get into all these things, all these differences. And then we get caught into the fear versus the love. And you can't be fearful when you're working with life. I mean, that just kind of doesn't happen when you're gardening. You know, you just don't worry about those kinds of things.
You're you're identifying our purpose as a human species for being.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
are
yeah.
of
To
the-
live ethically, we have to support life.
ethically and biologically.
Yeah, yeah. It's inherent. That's the inherent agreement. That's what we stepped out of in the Garden of Eden, I believe. We decided not to tend the garden, that we would not concern ourselves with other life, only ours.
Well, we were kicked out.
Well, that's why we were kicked out. The minute you make that choice, you're kicked out of the garden, because you're no longer mutually supportive. You're extractive. So you become everybody's enemy.
Nice.
I wouldn't say that we were kicked out. I would say that we simply no longer realized that we were sitting in the garden
Yeah, no, that's, yeah, yeah, yeah,
and acted as if we weren't.
yeah,
Very good.
exactly. Because this garden's always there for sure. Yeah, yeah. It's not the way the story's told, but you're right.
Boy,
We got to inject fear in there somehow, you know.
Yes, right. Oh,
That's
perfect.
a beautiful story. I mean, you're telling,
Mm,
you know, it may sound as research and, you know, talking, but it's a story. It's the story of how you came to these decisions, you know, conclusions, and, you know, a hopeful cast on what can be done with it.
yeah,
And I love that. What I'm finding is there's in so many different fields, people are beginning to speak of such, you might
yes.
say, they're universal can openers. You just
Yeah.
pull out the church key and you can open any. No, I mean,
universal can openers.
yeah, I mean that's Ani, don't take me seriously. That was just a
Not
joke,
literally, yes.
or literally, but just finding the leverage to get beyond objections is how I would,
Yeah,
whatever part of the mind that would object and find problems and, you know, issues and reactions, you get beyond that. And
yeah.
I love your story in terms of how it indicates one such route.
Yeah, and there's so many. There's
Yeah,
so
there
many.
are.
Yeah,
In any
yeah,
field,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
I'm beginning to find so many of them. You know, people who are developing them and you know,
yes.
beginning to propagate. The amazing thing is that I think it's just really taking, you know, building up a head of steam, to use an old imagery, and really starting to work. People are, I mean, for instance, I mean, last night I moderated my first crossing party lines.
Oh,
And two things. I was totally impressed by the people, the participants. We had such a differing, what should I say, types of consciousness. There were philosophers there. There were housewives telling stories. There were young women telling of their fears, because the subject was embryos and the whole connection to
abortion.
abortion, but also IVF.
Yeah,
Anyway, it almost didn't matter what the subject was. People stayed on the subject, developed their ideas, and we had this incredible assortment of different ways of looking at it. I was in absolute awe. But the person I wanted to highlight was this woman named Lisa Swallow, who had created the mechanism, the vehicle, the crossing party lines framework. And what I noticed in the people, every one of them had been to at least one other gathering. They truly honored the process.
Mm.
So although they were so totally different, they listened to one another, carefully following that framework of, listener, speaker, interaction, a dyad that actually creates a unity. I mean, her vision actually propagates that idea, and it's being picked up. And it's, somewhat small still. I mean, they're all told, there are hundreds who have been involved in it, but her vision is to go big.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's not about politics. Well, I mean, it really isn't about politics at all. It's one of the underlying, mission statements is finding a common humanity.
Yeah.
By listening and learning to trust at least the hearing of one another, being it that you are able to communicate. Because that has been so lost. We still believe that some ancient god threw us out of the garden, when in fact, we're throwing ourselves out at every moment.
Yes.
I mean, I believe if we made that statement to Lisa, she would know exactly what we're talking about, no matter what her religious background is.
Yeah.
I'd be interested.
That's one, but there are others.
I'd be interested in Lisa Swallow and Kathryn Alexander getting together.
That could always be arranged.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's just, it's not what you do, it's how you do it.
When the
Really,
time's
I mean,
right.
yeah. And there's just so many things to be done. There's so many places where we have stepped out of the garden, stepped out of understanding that little piece, you can go to technology. We've always had technology. Birds use technology, chimps use technology. We all have a use for tools, which is what technology is. But is it serving life or is it not serving life? Is it taking us closer to life, a deeper understanding, a deeper connection? Or is it taking us away from all of that? Those are
Right.
big differences.
Yeah.
Those are big differences. So to say technology is bad, well, that's not what we're really saying. We're saying we're seeing a lot of technology is taking us away from life and we don't like it. I have to wonder. I mean, I love my iPhone. I do. I carry it with me. I use it all the time. And my life is richer and better for it. And it's interfering with the flight of birds, and it's raping the earth, and it's doing all those things. How could we do this better? Is my question. Not get rid of it. What could we do to make this happen in a way that didn't do those things? We've never looked at that, so we don't have answers for that. We think there's only one way of making iPhones, but I'll bet there's not. But we haven't asked those questions. We haven't paid attention to that. We're really good at solving problems. We're really good at that. So if our intent was to bring forth technology that serves life and to make sure that everything we did was not life destructive, we would figure it out. It would take us maybe longer. I don't know, maybe not now because we've already got a model to follow. But we haven't really thought about that. And people feel that if they have to feel about that they're somehow bad and wrong and they can't do it. instead of taking on the task of saying, oh, well, let's see if we can figure it out. I mean, the energy companies, for heaven's sake, they've got the infrastructure. Why aren't they figuring out how to do it in a different way? They've got all that money, all that resource, all that capability. And if they pivoted like that, it would be fast, quick and easy. And they'd still make money. But saying, oh no, that makes us different. We can't do it. We've got to stop is a wrong conversation. It doesn't engage them, and it certainly creates a tremendous amount of resistance. And it's just waste, waste, waste.
Do you
mean,
know initiatives that are addressing that?
I don't know that anybody is. The only story even similar to that I know of, that I've heard of, was there was a guy, and I don't remember his name, who was head of the Sierra Club. And he left the Sierra Club to be a consultant so he could talk to Walmart about being sustainable. And he did have a huge shift in Walmart. They really understood some of that. And then they forgot it. You know, new people come in. That's the thing. You can't tell the story once. You got to keep telling it, because new people come in and they change and all of that. And so they bring things back the way they used to be. So it did have an impact for a period of time. And then it's gone back. I just heard the guy from Exxon did this whole big public speech at Davos, I think, saying, well, you know, it's really you guys' fault that we're where we are. I mean, I mean, people were just going, what? And, and he needs somebody to sit him down and talk to him. He needs to be in one of Lisa Swallow's courses. He needs to be able to settle down, instead of defending himself, hear the other side in a way that touches his heart, and then he'll figure it out. But somebody has to do that. Yeah, I mean, the protests and stuff, they had their moment, but they're not working anymore. We've got to do something else. And that individual approach, I don't think there's anything that's better than it. But whether you talk to his kids or his wife or him, somebody has to sit him down and he has to engage. Which is why most of us feel helpless around that, because we can't do that for him. We can only do that for the people around us. But still, if we did that, we can do what we can.
And who is he again?
He's a current head of Exxon.
And
yeah, if you'll Google him, you'll see his speech, because people are just like, I can't believe he did that.
What's his
Yeah.
name?
I don't know. I don't remember his name.
But he's who again?
He's the
President?
head of Exxon, the oil company.
Okay.
Yeah, and he just did this very big speech that just had people
Can
shocked.
can we find it?
Oh
Or
yeah,
you-
I'm sure you can. Yeah. Just Google who he is. Google the head of Exxon, and then Google him, and his speech will come right up, I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really hard to listen to. It's just like,
It's saying
well, he's saying that we're responsible for what they're doing.
we're responsible for what who's doing.
Exxon, that we've passed the time to make a difference.
So what Exxon is doing is institutionalized and permeates everything.
Well, that yes, there's no reason for them to stop doing fossil fuels or to stop worrying about making profit out of fossil fuels, because it's past the prime anyway. And we all want fossil fuels, therefore we're responsible for them doing it.
Okay, because we're supporting it financially.
Well, it's the same thing that an abuser tells to the person he hits. If you didn't do that, I wouldn't hit you. It's the abuser talk. You're responsible for my anger because it's your behavior that makes me angry. That's BS. And he's just refined it to talk about allowing Exxon to continue merrily along without having to consider making changes, because
Well,
it's,
in his speech, by the way, did he happen to mention during the 70s when they absolutely knew the effects of
yeah.
global warming and they put millions of dollars into,
Dollars into hiding that so nobody would find out. Yes.
yeah, did he mention that?
No, of course not.
Oh, what a
Those are
shame.
questions. Yes.
Doesn't it come
Yes.
down, doesn't it come down to our capitalistic system of economy?
I again, it's the system is a function of what we've chosen to be and do.
But it's
That's
stupid. You can put one in and take two out. You know, the profit, the
right.
financial.
Yeah, but you don't have to do that, and some of us are working on that. I mean, long ago, I just couldn't see how to tear down the system that we have, but I could see ways of building up new systems, and I was really curious about how to build the new. So I put all my energy in trying to understand the experiments that so many people are doing to try and figure it out. We don't have it figured out, but there are lots of places where there are really good alternatives to what we're used to doing. So we don't have to do what we used to do anymore. We can actually do other things. And my belief has been and still is that other system is going to collapse, and it's going to collapse even sooner now. And there will be an underpinning of those who are working to maintain life. There's some real challenge now that I didn't see, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And I don't know how we're going to solve that. And I'm speaking specifically of food. The changes in temperature really impact plants, and they can't move from where they are. They're kind of stuck. So they either adapt or they die. And the changes are happening so fast, it is really hard for them to adapt in the way they normally do. So we're going to see all sorts of things. I read an article the other day about Georgia peaches. They have hot weather and the peach trees bloom, and then they get a freeze and everything gets killed. So they have either no peaches or really ugly, bitter peaches. So they've lost 90% of their crop. Now, how long can a farmer tolerate that? They've got bills. They lose 90% of their crop for 1 year. Yeah, we can kind of go through that. If they do it 2 years in a row, that gets really dicey. If it's 3 years in a row, we're thinking about doing something else. So we may lose peaches because it takes time to grow peach trees, and they're not going to grow where they used to grow because the temperature's changed. We're going to see that in every area of our food, everything that's grown, and clothes too, cotton, linen, all those things. Because we've created farms that are in places that are changing. And we're not adapting to it quick enough.
And the life-friendly approach to that is what?
For me, it's all about cooling the planet. And we've been depending on Exxon Valdez and all those folks to cool the planet for us by stopping doing what they're doing, which they're not doing. So what can we do? We can work with the water cycle to cool the planet, because that's how the planet's cooled. So if we make rain where we're at, we're going to be way better off than if we don't. So soil is back in the heart of things.
And how do we make rain?
By having healthy soil and planting native trees as native forests, not just trees, and helping the water to be where the water falls. That's how you cool where you are.
The last sentence, the last point, repeat that, please.
Well, that's how you cool where you are. That's all you can do is where you are. You can't do anything anywhere else. So you
And-
have to cool where you are, and you cool where you are by making sure that plant life can thrive where you are. Period. And that takes healthy soil. So compost. I mean, it seems so simple and so silly, but it is so basic. It is so basic. We just have to put back what we take, which is what compost is. We don't put back anything. We just take it. So we have to put everything back. And that's what compost is, just putting stuff back. And I feel a little anxious just because it takes so long to work with nature. I mean, she doesn't do things overnight. You know, it just doesn't happen that way. You create the conditions and then she does her magic, but that takes time. So the longer we wait for this, the more difficult it's going to get.
So how can we make that, how can we present that in a way that attracts people to engage in this life enhancing way of thinking and being?
I got a 6-minute slideshow. And I have a program, and I'm really, I mean, I'm really thinking citywide, and it's been interesting. I've shared the proposal with a couple of people, and those who understand have been really jazzed by it.
Yeah.
So I think there's, it's just a matter of finding the right ears. It would be really neat to export this to other cities. I mean, the whole thing that I thought of and the way I put it together is designed to have residents get excited about doing this, not for any other reason other than they see the value of living soil in the land they own. And that's all they really need to start thinking about, is that. And to get excited about it and to play the game. And if enough people do, it will make a difference. And a Miyawaki forest takes 3 years before it's self-sustaining. That's pretty short time to see results, to see real results. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, if enough people did it, if enough cities did it.
Well, you know that, oh,
I think Santa Barbara is I don't know what to call it yet, a term yet, but it drew me. I think the fact that Barbara Marx Hubbard in Conscious Evolution was here, you know, her message came out from Santa Barbara. I came here because of that kind of energy, that because the city, I had this, oh, what did I say? The birthplace, the birth, the birthplace of a new humanity between the ocean and the mountains, because that's what it is. And that's why I'm here. I mean, Santa Barbara is wonderful. Let this be the city. I mean, I have nothing to do but work with you on something that is love unfolding itself.
Yeah, and I'm sure Santa Barbara, the city of Santa Barbara, already has pieces of this. I mean, Spokane certainly does. They've got a composting program. They've got a stormwater program. They've got a use less water program for the aquifer. They've got an urban tree or urban forest program. And so I've talking to all these folks, and they all smile and get excited. And then I listen to their speech and they're still not integrated in it. They're still not actually understanding the role of soil in what they're doing.
They need you.
Well, that's how I kind of see my job. It would be nice if the government said you should talk to them instead of me just talking to them. But given that, we're still talking to them. So it's having coffee and saying, gee, can you add this, or do you understand that? Or how about you talk about all the things trees do? How about talking about that trees make rain? Just add that piece, so that they begin to integrate all of that, and all of them are doing the same thing. Then we have a program that's got teeth to it. Yeah.
But there's also, I want to just make a comment of just in the passing, lots of different things that I pay attention to. There are other effects that are springing up all over the place. Wishful, you might call it wishful thinking or magical thinking, but I don't see it that way. I see it as cathartic thinking, being spurred by something like a 3-4 minute video I've seen on YouTube, because a friend of mine in Germany is very much involved in it. And it's bringing attention to a meditation focused on the eclipse and bringing in the light from the universe to focus on the earth and bring some kind of a consciousness change. Magical thinking, in a way, maybe a big way, but the fact of the matter is, it is really exciting people and getting them to see, yeah, there is really something going on here that's not good. And perhaps there are avenues already available to assist us, vehicles that can help us to get through this.
Yes,
And I'm noticing this in the way people are talking, in the various, I try to get as diverse a grouping of inputs as I possibly can. So I would point that out. I don't know if I'm going to do the meditation. I'm not sure it's exactly what I want to do, but I know that there are thousands of people who are going to.
Yeah.
And these things are popping up all over. There is a movement, despite what our CEO of Exxon is thinking.
Yes. Well, and there's so many ways, which is why I'm not telling people to do stuff.
Yeah.
Because
they will come to you at some point.
Well, you have to find your path to life and what excites you about life and what you can talk to others about life that ignites you so that you ignite them. It's not about doing what I do necessarily, unless what I'm doing excites you. And I mean, that's been actually very nice for me, is to start talking to gardeners and people who are already in this field, because it makes sense to them. They have a whole background that makes it much easier for them to say, oh yes, I get it. I don't have to spend hours explaining it to them. And it feels really good, I have to say. But that's not the only thing. Mark?
I have to go.
Oh,
This is wonderful. I'm gonna return on just some notes I was making through this conversation, so you'll have what was going through my mind, and it might not be any use at all because it'll be disconnected from me, but I'll do that anyways, and maybe it might be part of a future conversation. But yeah, this is great. And I was mostly nodding to everything we're talking about today. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Well, it's good to see you all.
Yeah, speak up.
It's good to see you all. Yes.
Yes.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
Yeah, we're working on 2 hours, so I guess it is time to go.
Wait a minute, what's meditation on the eclipse? When's the eclipse?
This is on April 8th, and it's passing from Texas all the way through to Nova Scotia. A total eclipse, and many of the people who are promoting this meditation are seeking to get a core of 30,000 people meditating together.
Oh, is this a coherence group?
What's that?
Is this a coherence group? Global coherence?
No, I don't know what the name is.
Okay.
it's my German friend. I'm not sure how he's connected to it, but he sure was excited. Is excited. I mean, it's at exactly 2:18 p.m. Eastern time, so it would be 11:18 Pacific Standard Time or daylight time. 11:18, and it's to meditate, visualizing the light and bringing its power into the human consciousness. And I mean, I do meditate, and but I'm not convinced that well, I am convinced that it works for some people. It's not something that I'm doing myself at this point, you know, as a form of radiation into the world.
Right.
But no, it definitely is effective, and many people are doing it in various groupings.
What just popped up in me as you're speaking, Robert, is meditation as a form of communion with what I'm meditating on. A communion with
Yeah.
energetic vibrational thing. Yeah. April the 8th at 11:18 California time.
Right. I will certainly have a moment of silence. Oh, and it's only the connected part of it's only 20 minutes. So 18, so it'd be 11:38 would be the end. I mean, yes, these things are necessary, you know, to have that kind of collective action. You know, who knows what'll work, but we obviously need to be trying a lot of different things right now.
Yes.
So is this coming out of the Global Coherence group?
Well,
initiative?
it may be. I don't know the name of who's actually behind it, but
Yeah.
it's a global group.
I'm interested in finding out and being part of that.
Well, just a sec. The way to look into this is I'll go to YouTube and see what my search shows me. No, I didn't do a search to get there. I used a link. Give me just one more sec.
Sure.
I think if I search 2024 eclipse. No. No, I'm not seeing it. Man, that a lot came up for that. But I'm not seeing the one that I actually watched. Sorry, I didn't write down the link. I didn't have the link.
Meditating, communing in with a with an with during an eclipse or on an eclipse that embraces humanity, embraces the life, planet, earth, all that is human consciousness. I mean, something wants to happen here.
That's very true. I
and,
wish
and result in, to some extent, in our maturation, because
Yes.
we're
Yeah. Yep.
And
Yeah,
to-
one of the things that I really got out of Spring's talk today was her sensitivity to the changes that China has gone through. Mao, in his vision of bringing China into the West, of trying to bring a country that was so centered on meditation and philosophy into a technological world. He really tried to strip the Chinese culture from those old, in quotes, aspects. And she talks about it as poetry for her, that poetry was disparaged. It was not important. It was frivolous, all of that. And people threw out their poetry books, and she rescued some. That's how she got her poetry books, because they weren't allowed to be sold anymore. And she felt this huge tension in her own self between the poetic part of her and the more rugged and fact-oriented part of her. And she went, her part of her journey is, okay, so my culture is telling me I have to be rugged. In fact, I have to have a job. I have to be able to work. So I'll do that, which she did. And then that got to a point where it didn't work anymore, where it was too painful to do. She went to Tibet, chose to get out of her job and go into acupuncture. And I have a friend who's on the exact same path, but then she went back to her job. But this tension between the old China and the new China, which we're seeing on the world stage. Exactly. They, as a country, have not resolved that issue, have not integrated those two sides of themselves. They're still torn, and they're destroying the treasure that they had for what they think is a jewel in the future. But we're doing that worldwide. You know, that's the whole thing. I mean, I just think in a nutshell, that's exactly what we're doing. It's this fight between the right and left hemispheres of our brain, if you want to do that. There's just all sorts of ways you can see that same tension going out. For me, the test is, does it allow us to live better? And better, is that comfortable and convenient, or is that vibrant and joyful? And, we've got this dichotomy going everywhere we see it. And we've just got to integrate it. It's just got to come back together, or we're not going to be here, because the life we depend on doesn't like a lot of what we're doing. So we've got to shift. We've got to stop doing that. And we can only do that if we integrate our needs for those things and express them in a different way. Yeah.
what would activate's not the right word. It's more fertile. I'm looking for a word more fertile than activate. But what would activate you and what you have to share? What would support your flourishing in sharing what you're saying, what you're sharing now?
Yeah. I mean, I see, and this is a tension for me, because I love to talk like this. I like to think like this. It's not doing. I hate to say it, but it's not doing. It's not making any real physical change in my environment. It's not helping the planet heal in any kind of real way. It's nice for us to talk to. It's nice. It's fun to do. Makes me feel good. But the only thing that I can see that's really going to make a difference is to work right now at this point in time in history on soil, because the planet needs a breather. She needs to keep the balance that we've found beneficial, and we have to help with that, or she can't do it. It's just that simple. It's just that simple.
I think I need to, the answer to that question for me is very simple. and I believe it applies to Kathryn, that she has found what she needs to be doing. I've found what I need to be doing. Now, life is, in terms of not just the cross-party lines thing, but, just reaching out to people just as broadly and, intensively as I can. That's what I'm doing. And it's funny, avenues are opening up wherever almost wherever I look lately. I mean, they're not huge. It's not suddenly 1,000 people storming my door. No, but it's 2 or 3 who are definitely, seriously, we're finding each other. And this keeps multiplying and multiplying. And the more I see so many of my friends telling me this, they're reporting back exactly the same process, I actually have considerable, I don't know if hope is the right word, but considerable assurance that we're going to at least give this a run for its money. I don't know if we're going to lick it. I don't know what the outcome will be, but we're definitely, people are getting motivated in my experience. It's happening all over. And part of it, I think, is generated just by being able to meet like this. And then carrying that to meet with some others, as I know you're doing. And then, it just keeps expanding. I mean, I have no doubt we're on the right track.
One of the things that gives me hope, Robert, no matter what, is a long time ago, there, in the 80s, I guess, there was this whole surgence of books that were channeled, and a lot of past life stuff and all that was a big deal in the culture. And somebody who was writing those books was giving talks all the time about past lives and sharing his stories and the people that he'd worked with and their past lives and all this kind of stuff. And in one of the audiences, somebody said, well, you're talking about past lives. Do you ever have stories from the future? And he said, yes, nobody has asked me this, but yes, I have heard stories from the future. And they have said there are not as many people as there used to be, but we are very happy. And that's given me hope. Some of us will, it has to be different. So, and we know that we've got too many people on the planet. So it's got to be less. So, yeah.
Anyway, on that degree of hope, I think I need to be going. Look forward to seeing both of you next week.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Okay, Kathryn, I'd like to continue to what I dropped out of what you said, and I want to be in the center of what you're saying. I mean, what you just said. I don't know what to do to be part of this in a way that is exponentially growing. I don't know what. I'll have to look the video of this and be reignited and be given direction by what you're saying. Can you summarize it again?
What I'm moving to and what really seems to have legs is getting people to think about keeping the water we get. It's not intellectual, it's not philosophical, it's really practical. And it seems to be something that people can understand. And it seems to take people out of all the political crap trap and all this other kind of stuff that we're caught in, because it just makes sense that if you want water, and there's so much research, if that's what people need, that places that have had arid land that wasn't usable, and they have gone in and fed the land with humus, made the soil alive again, that when it holds water, life comes back. Plants grow. It looks beautiful. It is rich and lush, which is what we want. This is something we can all do. And when you do that, springs that were hidden, that people didn't know were there, or that used to be there years ago, come back to life, because that's how springs are made. It's when water is in the soil, and then it, over time, it comes together and forms streams, but it has to be in the soil first. That's where it, but it has to, so it has to come down and it has to stay in the soil. We can't get rid of it. We have to keep it, however we manage to do that. So we keep it by feeding the soil. We keep it by working with the nature's landscapes so that that water puddles. Davis, or Village Homes in Davis, California, is a man-made community of, I can't remember how many homes, actually. I want to say 600, but I don't know. Could be 60. I do things with zeros, so I'm not sure. But it's a bunch of homes. And it was designed 49 years ago to do all these things that we know about how to work with nature when we build. And they have had a lot of rain in California lately. And they had 5 inches of rain in a day, and it did not flood.
Right.
Because it was designed to keep the water, not to get rid of it. See, that's the key. It wouldn't have flooded if we'd gotten it. But the problem when you get deluges of water is the infrastructure you designed to drain isn't designed for huge amounts of water. It's designed for smaller amounts of water. So when you get more water than that structure's designed for, it creates problems. So we reverse the tactic. Instead of trying to get rid of it, you want to keep it. And you really do want to keep it. That's how nature works. You don't throw away stuff, you keep it. That's why we compost, because we're keeping our crap, not getting rid of it. And if you can't compost it, you don't make it. See, that's what would have driven a totally different system if we've understood that we have to put back what we take. Everything has to be eaten, period. Then you don't make things that can't be eaten. I mean, we brag that it takes, 500 years for plastic to disappear. That's so counterproductive. And now we're seeing how counterproductive it is. What are you going to do with that stuff for 500 years? That's my problem with nuclear power. It's like 10,000 years before you can go back there. Why would you do that? I mean, it makes no sense. It just makes no sense. And so we have to go back to sense. Everything has to be eaten. You can do whatever you want as long as it can be eaten. It has to go back because we're on a finite planet. There is nothing here but what we do at all. There's nobody coming from outer space dumping new resources. We don't get a low payload coming through. Doesn't happen. So if we destroy what we need, what's the point of that? Why would we do that?
I'm listening with the excitement and intent of recognizing, of capturing, to capture the imagination of humanity in some kind of story. I mean,
Yeah.
Barbara Marx Hubbard's whole thing was story. I have a story to tell. You have a story to tell. And I want to support, facilitate, be part of.
Be it.
Be it. Be it.
What
Because
is your story?
Go ahead.
What is your story? It's your story you need to tell, not mine.
I mean, the story of the earth,
Well, tell it.
or the earth. I mean,
Tell it.
I'm
Yeah.
elemental.
And you've got all that poetry and all that music. So do something with it.
I hear you.
I mean, what you have to give is you, not me.
Right. And how my life relates to life. How
Yeah.
I am a participant,
Yeah.
a sustainable participant in life some kind of way.
Yeah.
It has a lot of maturation yet to do.
Yeah. Well, you were talking a time or two ago about doing a podcast of reading your poetry.
That's right. Okay. So I'm talking to myself to do this, to do something, to bring something forth.
Yeah.
Whew.
We have to be eaten by others. That's another way to be eaten, is by sharing your stuff.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. I have nutrients to share.
Yeah. Lots of them.
Boy, I'm gonna soak up this video and to get to the point to be activated. Activated with a vision, going somewhere with it. You're important to me.
Oh, you're important to me too. Yeah. I mean, we're enlivened when we're eaten by others.
Let's eat each other up.
Yeah. I mean, it makes such a difference. It truly does. You know, you can only talk to the air for so long. You really need to have somebody else hear you and appreciate you and be excited about you. That we just have to have that. And that's how we do it, is by sharing and talking and being with others.
Yeah, because we certainly have the capacity to turn each other on. We have the capacity to turn ourselves on and each other on through interaction.
Yeah.
It's like it's interaction that makes the wheel of life turn.
Yes. Nothing lives by itself.
Right.
Everything lives because other things live. I mean, that's something we just don't get. We think we can do it on our own, and you can't. You just can't.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Very good. Very good. I'm alternating. It's in a process of. It's almost scary.
It is scary. It's not almost, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because more life is so possible and so wanting to happen and so in this moment.
Yeah.
Enlivenment. That's why I loved Andreas Weber, and whatever the hell happened to him, where did he go with enlivenment?
Yeah. 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 He's teaching in England, actually.
Yeah, what we're talking is enlivenment. Cellular enlivenment in our bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. So go with the energy. I mean, that's the only criteria I have for correctness. I mean, I just like Weber says, when your body goes yes, you know that's right. It just is.
Who did you quote in saying that?
Andrews Weber.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
I'll refresh myself with him.
yeah. I mean, the body knows. It does. It does.
Does know
Yeah.
it's sentient.
Yes. Yeah. So go with that energy. When you get excited, you have to act from that excited place, whatever that is. That's why it's hard for me to tell people what to do, because I can't tell people what to do. You know, it just doesn't work that way.
Other than realize that in enlivenment is the way to go. Self-enlivenment.
Yeah. Yeah. Do what you love and the money will follow.
Getting money out
You
hell out.
can't get anything out. You've got to let it in. It's all part of that.
Our capitalistic system is not supportive of life.
That's true, but that's not what I said.
Well, you brought in money,
I did. It's a method of exchange.
but
That doesn't mean it's the only one. But as long as, again, we're back to the culture thing. You got to integrate it. It's got to be integrated in some kind of way. And it's got to be integrated in a, oh, that brings me actually up to something that I've discovered. We'll see how it works. Because I do need a little bit of more money, not a whole lot, but I need more because the outside system has changed and it costs twice as much for everything than it used to, and that impacts me. And so I've got to bring in more somehow. So I have found a guy. He's in North Carolina. His name is Kevin Jones. And he's a big investor type person. But he's been really dissatisfied with investors because it's a taking game and he sees it as a zero-sum thing, and it's just not. So he's been trying to figure out how he can make it a full circle. And so he has a way of doing that. He talked about it in a group I was in yesterday. Is it only yesterday? Or it could be the day before, but I think it was yesterday. And I get real excited about it. So I'm gonna take his class, which he did not intend to be online. So they're struggling to put it online. And they haven't even done a registration ship, and they want to start it on the 22nd of March, which is next week. Anyway, this is not done professionally, but we're working with it. So as I understand it, it's called Give to Invest.
give to invest.
Give to Invest, yeah. And a group of people come together and they all put in a certain amount of money in the pot. You need $5,000 to be able to get money back. As when the pot becomes $5,000, then those people put money in the pot get to decide where they want to put that money, where they want to spend it. And when that comes back, they get more money in their pot, not in their person, in the pot to reinvest. So it's outside of your daily living. You're not dependent on that. But that pot, those people around you as part of that pot could decide to give it to you. That's a possibility. That's a choice that group can make. It's a really interesting blend of what Grameen used to do with women in a village where they each gave $5, and then one person would get that pot. They'd go off and do their business, then they'd pay that back, and then they'd give it to the next person. So that's how Grameen worked.
Why can't that be done without money?
Well, how else are you going to do it? Then you figure it out and do that.
It's like making money, king of the hill. And it's not.
Money is just a way of trading value. You can use cowrie shells if you want. There are tribes that did that for a long time. You can do sweet potatoes too.
Eat
You
anything
can do cows. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it's a group thing instead of an individual thing. It's group choices about where to put the wealth for the benefit of the shared value. And however you do it, whatever method you want to use. But it's really hard to trade cows to people who want sweet potatoes. It's really awkward, which is why we created money so that we didn't have to do that. You could, I mean, I've walked with alternative currency. You can use time as money. There's a whole time dollar thing. I spent years on that. So, I mean, but you have to have something to trade, to cross boundaries, whatever that is. You just have to agree on it. Doesn't matter. It can be garbage. It was garbage for the mayor of Brazil. People brought him garbage. He gave them bus tickets.
The principle of crossing boundaries, the principle of generativity in crossing boundaries doesn't have to be in the form of money.
No, it doesn't. It can be sweet potatoes or cows or garbage. It can be anything you decide.
Or helping each other.
That's time.
Right, right.
Doesn't matter. But one size does not fit all.
Okay. It's all new territory with you. I'm gonna give some attention to my poetry.
Yeah.
See where that could go.
Yeah.
Because it's about a new story. I think Barbara was right. We're not living a new story. You know, we're living. I don't know.
We're living an old story in a new way.
What?
An
Say it
old
again.
story in a new way.
That works too. Yeah. We're living an old story. I love that cup. We're living an old story in a new way. Why do we have to live in an old story?
Well, I think that was part of our problem. We decided we want a different story. And the old story is life. It's pretty prosaic. And if you're not doing life, what kind of story are you doing?
Well, life is always a new story.
In a way, yes.
I mean, that's what new is.
And that is the new story because we stepped out of life. We decided we didn't want to play that game. We were going to do something else. And so we've done something else. And if it's not life, it's not life, it's death. That's the opposite, you know.
Right.
But staying in life gives you incredible amount of creativity.
Right.
There's actually no problem with it. I don't know why we thought there was, but we did.
Some contemplation that I've done the last few days is I had diverticulitis and had to be in the medical.
Oh,
stuff.
that's horrible, though. It's really painful.
Was about the simultaneity of life and death. They're simultaneous. And there's some that just musing the simultaneity of
Where's your
life.
poetry? Where's your poetry? Do a poem.
Okay. Okay, I will.
Yeah, yeah.
I have an assignment now.
More than one.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you and bless you. I'm here for you. I'm always, I'm
thank
here.
you.
And I want to be there for you in the things you're involved in that are just so life enhancing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Check out the new website, see what you think.
what is it?
soilsmartsoilwise.com. It's just a baby, but it's the start.
Well, I definitely will. And I'll give you feedback.
Okay.
Bless you. Thank you. Okay, honey. Bye.
Bye-bye.